Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. You can leave us a voicemail at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us today. We got a big show for you. We're going to be talking about the 1971 Huntsville Sanitation Workers strike. Really excited for that. We're also going to be talking to the new co-executive directors for the Highlander Research and Education Center. All of that in the first half of the program and some other stuff. In the second half of the show, we are going to be talking to representatives from the National Staff Organization and staff for LaborNotes. National Staff Organization is going to be talking to us about why they have sanctioned the Indiana State Teachers Association. LaborNotes is going to be talking to us about a new guide to building a reform caucus within your union. And we're going to be talking about how the Department of Defense has revoked union contracts for civilian employees and what civilian employees need to do next, folks. It's going to be a big show, so we're not going to be opening the phones until later in the second half of the show. But you can always leave us a voicemail at 844-899-TVLR. We do have one of those that we're going to be playing. You can leave us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact, and you can actually send a text to the same number, 844-899-8857. Adam, last week you were at Tuscaloosa, the University of Alabama there, with the Union for Campus Workers, the United Campus Workers. They have a chapter in the state of Alabama that represents campus workers at UA, as well as Auburn and Jacksonville. They had an event last week that you spoke at. What happened there?
Yeah, I was really pleased to go down to Tuscaloosa this Thursday. The United Campus Workers of Alabama, specifically the UA chapter, held a rally at the Quad on campus there. And they also made some news last week with a billboard they rented right at the, I know it's on the intersection of University and Peter Bryce Boulevard. So it's a very, good location. And their billboard says, "Welcome to Alabama's flagship institution, where legends aren't paid." This message brought to you by the United Campus Workers of Alabama, ucwal.org. And they ended up getting a AL.com article about that, as well as the rally. So really proud to see that. And I love the messaging on the billboard because, of course, if you go anywhere near Tuscaloosa, you're going to see a lot of billboards about the University of Alabama, where legends are made. Is kind of the motto there. So, I was proud to stand in solidarity with United Campus Workers. I wear a lot of hats in the movement. I've spent most of my adult life in the labor movement because I believe something very simple. When working people come together around our common interests, we can improve our lives and we can make our society better. So, in the labor movement, we have this saying, an injury to one is an injury to all. And when you have workers on campus who are struggling to make ends meet, when you have people who keep the university running, who are paid wages that really don't allow them to live in dignity, that's an injury to everyone, right? The students, the stakeholders, the community members, all of us as the public, which help fund these institutions and rely on these important institutions. Universities, they like to talk about excellence. They like to talk about opportunity. They like to talk about shaping the future. But none of that happens without the workers that are on campus. The university runs because custodians keep the classrooms and the buildings clean, because dining hall workers keep thousands of students fed every single day, because administrative staff keep the place functioning, because graduate workers and student workers do so much of the teaching and the research that really makes the university what it is, and because professors dedicate their entire lives to education. Every single one of those jobs is essential, and every single worker there deserves a living wage. It's not a luxury. It's not radical. It's really the bare minimum, required for dignity. And I don't think that's asking a lot in our flagship institution. Folks who are showing up, working hard, contributing to the community, they should be able to afford housing and food and health care and a decent life. That's not controversial, I don't think. But, as we talk about on this show every week across the country, we've got this economy where the people who do the most essential work are often paid the least. And the bigwigs at the top, like to tell us to be patient, to tighten our belts, to be grateful for what we have. But, working people have been tightening our belts for decades at this point, while the rich keep getting richer. And that's why unions are so important. It's why unions like United Campus Workers matter so much, because that's how working people win our dignity. It's when we stand together and we organize for it. One thing that makes United Campus Workers pretty interesting is that it is a wall-to-wall union. That means everyone is in the same fight. Student workers, staff, faculty, support workers, standing shoulder to shoulder. And there are challenges that come with that, but there's a lot of opportunity that comes with that. And I think that's really how we win as the labor movement. Because the truth is, the folks who clean the classrooms have, more in common with the folks who teach in the classrooms than either of them do with the folks who actually run our state, right? So when working class people come together across job titles, across departments, across race and gender and our backgrounds, that's when our power starts to grow. That's when administrators and policymakers have to listen to us. That's when real change becomes possible. So really, I stand in solidarity with those United Campus Workers. It was also I want to mention there were a couple folks from UAW that were there in solidarity as well, from Mercedes nearby in Tuscaloosa. So I know they're going to continue to escalate this living wage campaign. It's really, a shame that you have folks on campus who are having to work a second or third job just to make ends meet. Especially folks who, went to the university, right? Obtained their degree from the university, obtained a lot of debt to get that degree. So I just really want to celebrate what they're doing, trying to build power in the public sector. For those of you who don't know, employees at colleges and universities in Alabama do not have formal collective bargaining rights. So the University of Alabama, as well as the other universities Jacob mentioned, they don't recognize the union. They don't sit down and bargain or negotiate with the union. So therefore, workers have to kind of be creative and organize a little differently, do different tactics, explore different strategies. And they're trying to do that with the United Campus Workers. So I would encourage anyone who works at a college or university in the state or in the South, because UCW has had a lot of success across the South, particularly our neighbors to the north in Tennessee. And as Jacob mentioned, there are growing chapters at Auburn, UA, Jacksonville State, and hopefully more to come. So I really, celebrate this. I want to continue to follow this campaign, see where it goes. But, they've had, I believe it was over 1,000 signatures on their petition that they've delivered to the administration. The administration doesn't want to talk. So, they're hoping they can be heard in other ways.
Yeah, it's a really exciting campaign and looking forward to seeing them succeed. The United Campus Workers of Alabama have gotten successes in the state already. At Jacksonville State University, where the union has a presence, they have already been able to secure, I believe it is a 10% raise, even without collective bargaining. It's still not where they believe it needs to be. It's not where I believe it needs to be, but it's 10% higher than it was before the union got there. So some good stuff coming out the union. We've got Whitney Washington in the Zoom. Y'all know her. She's a friend of the show. She's a member of the CWA, Local 3908, and vice president of the North Alabama Area Labor Council. She, along with Adam, are, something of citizen historians, and they just presented at a history conference last weekend. That's why Adam wasn't here. They had a presentation about the 1971 Huntsville Sanitation Workers strike. So we wanted them to talk to us about it here on the program. Whitney, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yeah, you sound great.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Whitney, I guess the first thing would be, how did you get on this beat? Like, what was it that made you want to look into the sanitation worker strike in 1971 and potentially, write something about it?
Yeah. Like you said, Adam and I are both history nerds. So when the opportunity to propose something for the Alabama Historical Association's conference came up, we were sort of going through what different labor stories would be worth highlighting. I know I've done some research on like the use of labor, organized labor in the building of a Frank Lloyd Wright House in Florence. And there were a few other topics we sort of toyed around with. But Adam was familiar with this sanitation worker strike. He'd heard about it from some friends of his. And it seemed like something that was really appropriate considering where we are right now in terms of public sector organizing. And it was also really around the time we'd done some organizing around that City to Tech campaign. So it seemed really appropriate, like a good fit for us to look into that particular strike.
When you looked into it, what were some of the interesting things that you found?
Uh, I think most notably is how really I'm not going to say racially motivated, but how big of an issue race was. The sanitation workers were mainly Black. They had a lot of outreach with civil rights leaders like Hosea Williams and Lyman Hood from Memphis. So it was really sort of on racial lines. And I think you'll also see you didn't see the support from the Labor Council or the other unions at the time that I would have liked to have seen in a strike like that from the predominantly white and white-led unions. And then even talking to people who were around in 1971, they are immediately talking about race. So I think that was really interesting. It was just like how sort of racially charged this particular strike was, which if you look at it on paper, I think wouldn't immediately come to mind.
That's not, I suppose if you think about it you just think about the year and the place, it may be less surprising than hearing about a sanitation worker strike, outside of that context. But thinking about, 1971, it hasn't been that long since MLK was assassinated. It hasn't been that long since the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act of the 60s were passed. There are still issues with desegregation. And so were you able to kind of figure out what the inciting incident was? Was there like a particular incident of racism by management against the Black sanitation workers that caused the strike, or were there just kind of enough pinpricks that the unit just decided we've had enough?
Yeah, it seems like sort of a perfect storm of little things over a while. I think one, just like the pay was abysmal. We looked it up, and it was their like base pay was nearly $1 less than it was. Hourly pay was nearly $1 less than it was in Gadsden. So they were just sort of especially vulnerable. I think, like you said, like just the moment that we were in the late 60s, early 70s. And then in 69, the city council actually voted to recognize unions or recognize a union for city employees, which led to them being able to organize. And so I think all of that sort of like came together really perfectly in January of 1971, where there was a really bad ice storm and trucks couldn't go out, and there was some miscommunication, and the workers didn't feel safe driving, and the city was pushing them to drive. And that sort of is where things really came together. And then, they started building out to start the strike in spring.
And you mentioned that you didn't see as much support as you would like to have seen from the other unions in the area, the white-led unions, the Labor Council, which is the federation of unions in the area. Were you able to find anything in particular that was kind of problematic, or was it just the absence of anything?
A little bit of both. I think as someone in the labor movement, um, I there were a couple of statements released by the Labor Council president that were just like, we need to smooth things out with the city, that were very much, yeah, trying to just make things go a little bit easier, that weren't really statements of solidarity with the workers, which I think as people in the labor movement is what we would want and expect.
Right.
Especially in a city like Huntsville, you would want to see your labor leader saying the city can do better. We need to respect our most marginalized workers, and you don't see that.
Right. What union were they organizing with? AFSCME, presumably, or was it sort of an independent effort?
It was AFSCME.
Okay.
And so they did. They had Lehman Hood, who was an AFSCME organizer from Memphis, who had worked on the '68 sanitation worker strike. He was coming down doing a lot of work with them here as well.
How long was the strike?
The official strike was 93 days. So I think it was April to July.
That's a pretty long strike, actually. And from April to July, I mean, you start getting into the summer months, and the trash, I would imagine, would start. That would start to be
immediately got scabs in. So there was actually the most sort of disturbance was from the strikers occupying streets. There's a famous photo where they're on the Parkway, which, as you know, is a main thoroughfare here. So the residents, I think it was like maybe a couple of weeks that there was trash piling up, but they basically immediately brought in scabs that were willing to take those jobs. So again, there just wasn't the support of labor that one would hope to be behind them in this.
And I was going to add something on that point. One of the oral history interviews we listened to preparing for this talked about the fact that as the strike unfolded, they prioritized certain parts of town for trash pickup. Like as they brought in these replacement workers or scabs, whatever you want to call them, conveniently, the white side of town, the wealthier side of town, had their trash pickup prioritized. So that was just another wrinkle to it that's worth mentioning. And, certainly there was a lot of we relied a lot on news coverage, contemporary news coverage, because there's not just a whole lot written. There's not a whole lot of oral history interviews with folks who participated. So we were relying a lot on what the Huntsville Times and the Huntsville News was saying at the time,
right?
Which, certainly has its issues and limitations and bias. There was, a big fear among the city establishment. This would be another Memphis. That was something that the workers also pointed to. They, more or less put it out there that this could be another Memphis, referring to the famous Memphis sanitation workers strike there, where Dr. King was assassinated. That was his last act of solidarity, was with those striking garbage workers in Memphis. And as Whitney mentioned, you had some, folks who experienced that campaign and organized in that campaign who came to Huntsville. The city itself of Huntsville was very concerned about its reputation, its image. This is a city that put a man on the moon. And here you have trash piling up on the streets. It's not a good look. And Huntsville had always, or at least, in this period, Huntsville had taken a more moderate approach to race than perhaps the rest of the state or many other cities in the state. A lot of people are familiar with, say, like Birmingham, Bull Connor, or, Governor George Wallace. Well, Huntsville, being a very federal dependent town, took a different approach, right? The first black public school student to integrate an Alabama public school was Sonny Herford IV here in Huntsville. And Huntsville took a little different approach, in part to keep federal dollars flowing, right? They needed that NASA money. They needed that Redstone Arsenal money. And so, and Huntsville, I think, has always maintained that image, or tried to maintain that image of being a little bit different from the rest of the state. I don't want to say more progressive, but less regressive, perhaps, would be the better framing. So that was interesting. And I think, there was police brutality that was mentioned in some of our research. There was accusations of violence, that the strikers were alleged to have committed violence, as Whitney mentioned. There were instances of people lighting their trash on fire, as it was piling up, and that being an issue. We also
of like anti-union people.
No, not necessarily.
Lighting the trash on fire.
No,
or?
Not necessarily. What the interview I'm thinking of talked about in some of the housing projects where the trash hadn't been picked up.
Okay, so it's just people like, I just need this out of my hair. I'm gonna burn the trash.
Right.
Okay, I see.
Right, and so it was kind of eerie, to have, a bunch of trash fires going on.
Right.
And we also uncovered that the military was testing helicopters at the time, and for practice surveillance, they surveilled the strikers in Huntsville. So, there's always been a long history of police and military intervention and strikes, and I'm not, I don't want to make too much of it, but it was interesting. It caught my eye.
Yeah.
That, they referenced that, they were the government was testing out helicopters and, was spying on these folks for practice for those folks. And it was a very racially charged time, and it was a very, tough fight because these are some of the lowest paid workers in the city. And it's an easily replaceable job, when it's that low wage. So their leverage was limited. So it was a tough fight. And there's just not much written about it. And I think probably in part because it was a tough fight that didn't end super greatly.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think my understanding is that y'all are going to be writing an article for the Alabama Historical Association, so I'm looking forward to being able to read that in full. But you mentioned Huntsville's sort of has always tried to to project a more moderate, less regressive picture of itself, and I mean that like I think that everybody senses that. I mean there's an older white person that I met. I don't have like an ongoing relationship with him, not because of this, but just we just haven't had reason to interact recently. But he came from Birmingham in the 60s. He was like in school, and so he was a white person. And so the race stuff was like a huge big thing. And when he came to Huntsville, there were black people in his class, in his white school's class. And he talked to other black people, to some of the white people, and was like, well, look, there's an N-word here. And the other white people around him were just like, what are you doing? Like that, what is your problem, dude? So, I mean, that's definitely... Huntsville kind of has that perception, and there's a reason for it. I do think that race has been like maybe less of an issue than in Birmingham, but certainly not non-existent. And so,
or just an issue in a different way. It's just handled
in a different way. And well, the city was very clearly trying to manipulate some of the racial aspects with getting white people's trash picked up first, because presumably that was in part an effort to both placate the white people, but also to put a barrier between the black strikers and the black community, right? And make it more difficult for black non-sanitation workers to see themselves as part of the same fight as the sanitation workers. And so I'm curious, as the Huntsville Times was reporting on this, and y'all trying to uncover some of this, I presumably somebody had to have asked the city council and the administrators, well, why not just pay them as much as Gadsden sanitation workers are making, instead of doing this whole big rigmarole, bringing in scabs, like creating potential opportunities for violent conflict. Why not just pay them more? Just pay them, I know that Gadsden at this point is a much smaller and less resourced city than Huntsville is today. I think they were probably pretty close then, but still, $1 an hour back in 1971 goes a lot. That's big. That's huge. What was the city council's reason for not giving the strikers what they were asking for?
I don't know if there's like a clear answer on that. I do think in general the city wasn't extremely supportive of any of the workers organizing. I think it was just the sanitation workers that got organized first, and in some ways this was probably a lesson to the other departments of like what would happen. Because interestingly enough, by 1972, the city council does pass a higher wage for sanitation workers. I don't think the strike was asking for $250, and I think the raise was to like $245. And so this is like less than a year after the strike.
Right.
So it probably was less of like a literal like numbers thing and more of as like a statement against organizing.
I see. So they basically so you think that it wasn't really the numbers, like the numbers that they were asking for were reasonable. Everybody understood they were reasonable, but we just couldn't have uppity municipal workers, making a stink and then it being kind of directly tied to the making of the stink that they got a big raise.
Yes. So this was after basically all of this happened after the strike. The ASME also sued the city to make sure or to ensure that most of the workers that were let go from the strike got their jobs back. And that did happen again much more quietly after the strike had ended. So if there are immediate lessons to the workers in 1971, it's don't make a big fuss. It's that, this can all be handled administratively, basically.
And so ultimately the resolution was that many of the workers, probably most of the strikers or all the strikers, were fired. They did get their jobs back, but it took a little while for that to happen. They did end up winning their wage demands at the very least. Is there any other important pieces of the story that you wanted to make sure you brought out before we come up on our break?
I think, that there may not have been as much solidarity from the labor movement as one would have liked, but there was solidarity with other people, especially people that had been engaged in the civil rights movement. There was a lot of action with faith leaders. A lot of the sanitation workers themselves actually were faith leaders. So there was solidarity around the city. So it wasn't, just these workers. Other people were a part of this. We just didn't see the support from labor that, I think I would have liked to have seen.
One more question. You said that, prior to the strike, the city passed a resolution to authorize the organization of municipal workers. At this point, it is not my understanding that municipal workers in Huntsville have the right to organize. When did that end?
I'm not sure. That is a great question.
All right. Whitney Washington, Vice President of the North Alabama Area Labor Council, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for your research into this really important piece of Huntsville history. And thanks for talking to us about it today.
Thank you. Have a good show.
Yep. Adam, you had anything else on that before we go to the break?
Yeah, it's disappointing when you see a struggle that doesn't result in lasting organization, but there's still lessons to be learned, and it really enjoyed connecting with folks across the history scene so we can advance Alabama's labor history. It's necessary.
We're going to take a break, folks. We will be right back.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger food drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right. right, folks, from the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Today on the program, we just finished a conversation about the 1971 Huntsville, Alabama sanitation strike. If you missed it, you can find it on YouTube or Facebook at the Valley Labor Report. We will soon be talking to the new co-executive directors for the Highlander Research and Education Center and more. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can do that at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send us a text at that number or leave us a written comment at tvlr.fm/contact. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate or patreon.com/the Valley Labor Report. We've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then you should think about getting your local, district council, your regional, or your international to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
Hey, good morning, y'all. Let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out at laborradionetwork.org. And as most of you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard union members who want to amplify the voices of the working class here in the American South. We're hoping to make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank you for tuning in and appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Every week in the South, workers organize new unions, they bargain new contracts, they fight for good legislation and against bad legislation, and they put the boss in their place. These are some of the stories that we could find from April 10th to April 17th. This is Last Week in Southern Labor. Over the last week, actually no workers unionized in the South, but 119 workers in 2 bargaining units did withdraw their petition for a union election. 250 workers across four bargaining units voted against unionization. 1,013 workers in 17 bargaining units have gone public with their union campaigns, and 682 workers in 2 bargaining units are in decertification elections. In new campaigns, 490 workers at Southern Food Service Management in Fort Lee, Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Chemical Workers Union Council of the UFCW. 201 security guards at Garda World Security Services in Moncks Corner, South Carolina, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Union of Security, Police, and Fire Professionals of America. Workers likely pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify the District of Columbia Nurses Association as the union representing 680 workers at the George Washington University Hospital in Washington, D.C. This is a really interesting case. I mean, workers at this hospital keep filing petitions to organize and keep filing petitions to decertify. Strange thing happening here. 50 workers at Howard University Hospital in Washington, D.C., though, filed a petition to hold a union election with the D.C. Nurses Association. 82 workers at Tri-County Electric Cooperative in Azle, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW Local 738, and 19 workers at Starbucks in Columbus, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with Starbucks Workers United. In election results, 93 workers at Trojan Battery in San Sandersville, Georgia, withdrew their petition for a union election with the International Brotherhood of Boilermakers. 26 workers at Huntsman Corporation in Freeport, Texas, withdrew their petition for a union election with the International Union of Operating Engineers, IUOE, Local 564. 31 workers at MEMC in St. Peters, Missouri, voted 13-18 against unionization with District 9 of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW. 224 workers at ADUSA Transportation in Dunn, North Carolina, voted 83-107 against unionization with the Teamsters, Local 391. 8 workers at UD Contracting in Fort Knox, Kentucky, voted 0-6 in favor of decertifying the plumbers and pipe fitters, UA Local 502, and 12 workers at Workman and Sons Plumbing in Ashland, Kentucky, voted 0-12 against unionization with the plumbers and steam fitters, Local 248. Really, really tough week in union elections. But in grievances, unfair labor practices, and court cases, a jury found that Ticketmaster and Live Nation, which merged in 2010, are a monopoly and act in an anti-competitive way. The U.S. Department of Justice, which was one of the plaintiffs under the Biden administration, withdrew from the case under Trump, but 33 states and D.C. decided to keep going. The verdict by the jury doesn't immediately decide remedies. That comes next, but possibilities include refunds for people who purchased what have been found to be overpriced tickets, the corporation being forced to sell off parts of itself to reintroduce competition, and more. On the other hand, it could also look like the weak settlement that the company made with the Trump administration, in which it paid $280 million and mandates some behaviors to increase competition, but ultimately does not break the company up nor provide immediate relief to concert goers. In strikes and bargaining updates, would you accept a guaranteed 20% raise over the next 4 years? That's the question that thousands of DHL workers across the country are debating as they decide whether or not to ratify a new 4-year tentative agreement with the company. The Teamsters National Bargaining Committee for DHL recently reached the agreement with the company, narrowly averting a strike that had been authorized by 96% of DHL Teamsters in the event that the company wouldn't agree to a fair offer. In addition to the 20% pay increase, the union says that the new contract, if ratified, would include higher health and welfare contributions along with critical job protections. The union also said the contract establishes robust safeguards against AI-driven routing systems that undermine seniority and explicitly prohibits the use of autonomous vehicles that threaten Teamster jobs. 500 drivers and warehouse workers at CVS's distribution center in Fredericksburg, Virginia, voted to authorize a strike as their current contract gets closer to its expiration date of April 30th, and they still have no tentative agreement. The workers, unionized with the Teamsters Local 592, are demanding a fair agreement and rejecting CVS's concessionary demands. In a press statement, the union pointed out that CVS is the largest retail pharmacy chain in the United States. It posted $402 billion with a B in revenue in 2025 and nearly $1.8 billion in profits. And despite that, the company is demanding cuts to affordable health care along with other core benefits. In political and legislative updates, federal firefighters might finally be getting hazard pay, a 25% raise while doing specific hazardous activities, thanks to their union. These workers have so far gotten no hazard pay for activities on the fire line related to the preparation, implementation, and control on prescribed wildland fires, despite the fact that other federal workers do get hazard pay. The union, the National Federation of Federal Employees, NFE, has been fighting for this since 2022, trying to get the change implemented however possible, whether that be through legislation or the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, changing the rules. Well, OPM has blinked first, finally relenting, and proposed the rule change on the Federal Register. OPM is accepting comments until June 15th. If implemented as is, firefighters would start getting hazardous duty pay for those activities the following week. NFE is still pursuing legislation to codify the coming change. The Trump administration doesn't want to investigate companies for breaking labor law. Crystal Carey is the current Trump-appointed general counsel for the National Labor Relations Board. Previously, she worked for the anti-union employer-side law firm Morgan Lewis. She was so bad that even the Teamsters' Sean O'Brien opposed her nomination, even though he hates to do anything that opposes the Trump administration. Of course, Sean O'Brien's acquiescence to Trump hasn't gotten him nor the Teamsters much of anything because Kerry's nomination held and she was confirmed. Kerry recently maintained a new rule from the interim general counsel who took the job after Trump fired Jennifer Abruzzo that requires employees and unions to do most of the investigative work of a complaint before the board for the professional board investigators. I'm sorry. This new rule requires employees and unions to do most of the investigation for the board, instead of workers and unions being able to make a complaint before the board and the professional board investigators then going to, well, investigate. Now, a complaint will be dismissed if the union or the employees do not present a chronological timeline of events, names and titles of all involved, along with contact information, documentation including texts, emails, and phone records, along with a list of witnesses and summaries of their testimonies. Additionally, the NLRB will no longer pursue charges against an employer who implements unlawful work rules, such as saying that it's prohibited to talk about unions as long as the employer agrees to stop breaking the law. Under Kerry, no further remedy is necessary. No statement acknowledging that they broke the law, nor acknowledging what the law is. In internal union affairs, the labor movement continues to grapple with the recent allegations of rape and sexual abuse by farm worker union leader Cesar Chavez. Ana Avendano, author of Solidarity Betrayed: How Unions Enable Sexual Harassment and How They Can Do Better, wrote about some recommendations for unions for in these times, among them that unions should release staff from NDAs and cease their use in the future, as well as holding truth and reconciliation commissions. LaborNotes has an interview with the author of a Chavez biography, who points to the lack of democracy in the United Farm Workers as a big reason for Chavez's ability to get away with what he did, as well as a response letter from a California union organizer who pointed out that democracy isn't a cure-all and that the UFW situation is complex. The International Association of Firefighters boasted that 100% of the 18 new recruits joined their Memphis local last week, and the Alabama State Council of Machinists elected its first woman president at its convention, Michelle Hunt of the International Association of Machinists Local Lodge 2003. If we missed anything, let us know at tvlr.fm/contact, and you can subscribe to the newsletter for the exhaustive version of Last Week in Southern Labor at tvlr.fm. I believe that we have Garrett Stark in the Zoom. Garrett is the co-executive director of the Highlander Research and Education Center. Joining us momentarily will be Vonda McDaniel, president of the Nashville Central Labor Council and also co-executive director of the Highlander Research and Education Center. But she's running a little bit late, but we're going to go ahead and start with Garrett. Garrett, thank you for taking the time to talk to us this morning. I appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, it's great. Glad to hear that. Really excited to be able to get you on. Could you talk a little bit about your experience prior to now leading with Vonda, the historic Highlander Research and Education Center?
Sure. It's an honor to get to play this role, and especially an honor to get to play it with Vonda. I've gotten to work with her for about 15 years in the labor movement, mostly in Nashville. I was a student who got active, and I did a lot of community organizing, mostly as a volunteer, and then started working in the labor movement for a few different unions in the Nashville area mostly. I got to work for the SEIU Local 205. I got to work for the Southeast Laborers District Council, for the Ironworkers International, and with CWA. So I've had a few different hats that I've gotten to wear over my time, but we both really come out of the labor movement. We both have an eye to working with community organizations from that background, and we're honored to get to play this role together.
That's awesome. I did not realize that you also had such an extensive history in the labor movement. SEIU 205, some of their members may be listening. We're on the radio also in Chattanooga, and I know that they represent the municipal workers there as well, is my understanding. So maybe we've got some listeners who recognize your voice. Is that common for executive directors of the Highlander Research and Education Center to have such extensive experience in the labor movement, or was this is this something new?
So it's a 94-year-old organization, and it was born in building the Southern labor movement in the 30s, right? So the original Highlander Folk School in Grundy County, Tennessee, was the training ground for the CIO for the South. So certainly there is a long, rich tradition of labor activism coming through Highlander. Any organization that's that old has had many different phases of its work. It had a phase of really supporting to incubate civil rights organizing in the 40s and 50s and 60s. The organization had a lot to say about strip mining, coal mining in Appalachia, and it's had many different iterations. But we're not the first labor folks who have gotten to work at this organization.
That's right. I had totally forgotten about Highlander's sort of origin story as being such a, being linked so closely to the CIO as the CIO was organizing in the South. The Highlander is to me, the connotation is very much civil rights movement, 50s, 60s, 70s. And I had totally forgotten about, that it had been around for even longer. So that's really, really cool. What else, you talked there a little bit about Highlander and its history, but what about Highlander as an educational resource for movement people, whether that be in labor, civil rights, or other social movements? What makes it special and maybe a little bit different than other places where people can go to get education and training?
Highlander is not just a place where folks get training. It's a place where people build new relationships. So when Vonda and I did a deep dive into the history of the organization in preparation for trying to get this job, we learned a lot. There's a lot of rich history to draw from. So unlike ordinary schools, where folks maybe have a curriculum and are taught, sometimes taught at, Highlander is very participatory. It engages folks and thinks about the participant both as a teacher and a learner, and it has a long history of that, right? So, in the some of the history that we're excited about reviving and bringing to the bubble up again is that the new relationships are a movement building ingredient. For example. There's a lot of folks who will be excited about SNCC in the civil rights movement. SNCC famously was an engine of a lot of movement organizing in the region. 80% of the young people, the students who went on to form SNCC, first met each other and built relationships with each other at Highlander, at our workshops. And so it's not just what people are taught, but it's a place where people build relationships, both peer relationships and mentoring relationships. And that has helped movements grow for 94 years in the region.
I think that, the building of relationships and the development of community is really such an underappreciated aspect of being able to build successful labor and social movements. That cohesion is really important, and even when you don't come together for for a specific purpose or a united purpose, being able to make those connections that you might be able to draw on at a later point, I think is important. I mean, I think Adam and I, didn't we meet at the LaborNotes, at a LaborNotes school in Birmingham in like 2017 or 2018? Isn't that the first time that we met, or had we?
No, I think
previously?
that may have been the first time we met. It was the first time we for real connected, and same with David's story. I knew David a little bit, but that was the first time we really got to connect, and a lot of good has come out of that. And so I think that really speaks to what you're saying in terms of the power of building those connections and getting like-minded folks together to learn together, grow together, and make some good trouble together.
Speaking of connections, we now have Vonda McDaniel. Again, she is the president of the Nashville Central Labor Council and co-executive director of the Highlander Research and Education Center, now with Garrett Stark. Vonda, welcome to the program. Thank you for taking the time. Can you talk to the audience a little bit about your history, even though you've been on the program before, so so maybe people will recognize you, but for people who don't remember or this is their first time hearing you, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. And thank you, Jacob and Adam, for really working in collaboration and partnership over these years as we have tried to knit together a movement across the South and in Appalachia. So I have been, I'm a 35-year plus union member at this point. Have worked at every level in my plant. Then came to the Labor Council about 20 years ago. Been doing labor work, trying to build community around the work that labor does. Also, I grew up in a historic Baptist church in Nashville, where the Reverend Kelly Miller Smith, who was the founding, one of the founding members of the SCLC, was the pastor there. And so I think like movement work, labor work, working in community is really just a part of my personal DNA. And so I'm really excited to come to this role where Garrett and I have about 15 years of work together in movement space. And together it was kind of funny when we saw the numbers of putting together our work, more than 50 years of work in the South. So yeah, happy to be here again. Always on Saturday mornings. This is the background to my rest day on Saturdays. Happy to hear about all that's happening in our ecosystem across the South and across the country, really.
Garrett was talking a little bit about, what kind of makes Highlander special. And another one of the things that I think is important, as I understand the history of Highlander and its sort of methodology for educating. I think that's one of the things that maybe sets it apart, and the way that it does participatory education. It takes from the legacy and also contributes to the legacy of people like Paulo Freire. Actually, Paulo and a Highlander founder, Miles Horton, have a book together. Somebody mentioned in the chat, We Make the Road by Walking. I don't know which of you is maybe more interested in talking about that, but I'd be interested in hearing a little bit from y'all about the model of participatory education and what that means and how it's different maybe from history classes that people take in a typical public high school.
Well, I think that I'll start. I think that participatory model starts from the life experience and lived experience of the participants in the cohorts and builds on that experience, so that everybody connects their life experience to the problems that they and the questions that they want to address. I think of Septima Clark and how at the time voting rights was a issue across the South that needed to be solved and people were grappling with in communities against Jim Crow. And Septima Clark was an educator. She was also a civil rights activist. But out of the conversations and the formations at Highlander, they were able to start more than 5,000 freedom schools across the South, and impacted more than 10,000 people in that area, in the South. I think that it all starts from our experience and connecting that experience to one another to solve the challenges that we have in our communities. And I think that Highlander, Miles Horton, he was famous internationally around this folk school model that really related people's lived experience to solving the problems that they saw in their communities.
Absolutely. Garrett, I don't know how much else there is to add to that, but I don't know if you had something that you wanted to add to the participatory model of education.
Just that if folks have read Pedagogy of the Oppressed, but they have not read The Long Haul, you're missing out, because we have a tradition in the South that doesn't need. There's much to be learned from work that's happened in Brazil and around the world, but we have a tradition of the same quality right here in our region.
Absolutely. I have not read The Long Haul. Who is that? Is that by Miles Horton?
It is, yeah.
I'll have to pick that up. I have not read Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I've read a little bit about it and some of the stuff about around Paulo Freire and I have been fascinated by the tradition of liberation theology in the Catholic Church in Central, South, and Latin America, and so Freire's name comes up a lot. But so I do love being able to find Southern kind of touch points for these sorts of movements, and so I'll definitely want to check that out. So as you two get into your roles, I mean, you're fairly new. I think it's been a month or less that y'all have now been co-executive directors for Highlander. What are some of the things that you want to do? Like, how do you want to lead Highlander and build on its legacy? Garrett, we can start with you since Vonda
Sure.
answered first on the last one.
We have big visions. We have big dreams. I mean, Highlander was and has been a training ground and incubated many movement organizations in the region. We got big problems today, and so we got to have some big solutions. So we want to be part of helping to train up folks. I think both Vonda and I spent decades learning fundamental skills for how to be effective in doing movement work and how to build a campaign and how to run a meeting, some basic things. And it shouldn't take us this long. It shouldn't take us decades to learn some of these skills. So we want to help folks skill up so that we can get to the wins faster. We want, we want Highlander to be a place that is incubated. We are not the vehicle for campaigns in that we're not running campaigns ourselves, but we think that supporting the development of strategic campaigns in the region is a really critical role that we want to grow into and advance. So there's a lot to do. There's a lot to get busy doing. Yeah.
All right, Vonda.
I mean, I think the thing that I would add to that is that there's already like really important things happening throughout the region. Some of what is happening is that it is operating in silos. And in this moment, more than ever, we need the power of our numbers. And the only way that we can exercise that is to come together. And I think that Highlander is a unique place to be able to convene, ecosystem leaders across the region to begin to not recreate what folks are already doing, but understand what the gaps are in terms of our ecosystem and build out these effective fronts that really are able to push back against the authoritarian regime that we are currently faced with.
Vonda, where can people go to learn more about Highlander and potentially, get notified when events and training opportunities come up, or if their organization wants to partner with Highlander to try to craft some education? Where can they go to look into any of that or start those conversations?
I'm so glad you asked, Jacob. So we are asking folks to sign up for our newsletter. Go to our website, sign up for our newsletter. That keeps you up to date on trainings that are being held around the region and how you can connect. Also, Highlander is on all social media channels. And follow me and Garrett. We move around the region, and we are really excited to be in this role. I mentioned Septima Clark before. One of the things that she talked about was doing spade work and how important that was. And so for me, this is the spade work, and I am so excited to be able to be a part of, just run a leg of the race in the history of Highlander.
Absolutely. Well, I know that y'all are both very busy. My understanding, Vonda, is that you'll be at a picket line this evening with the nurses union protesting at a gala, trying to get a big hospital corporation to cut its relationship with Palantir, which I think, hospital and Palantir, I don't know why they're together. And yesterday I saw, just before we went live, that your, a project that you're really involved in Nashville, the Music City Construction Careers, just did a big sister city thing with a Northern Ireland city about how, so people are coming from Northern Ireland to learn from Sister Vonda McDaniel in Nashville, Tennessee. So it's so cool. Y'all are doing so much cool stuff. So I don't have any other questions for you. Garrett, do you have anything else before we let you go?
Just to add on that, that if folks want to dig into some of our history, there's some beautiful shorts that have popular education curriculum already laid out. They're at ygtm.org. These are excerpts from a documentary called You Gotta Move. So there's a lot of Highlander history if folks are interested.
All right. Vonda, anything else from you?
No, we look forward to connecting with folks throughout the region to build a more powerful, leaderful movement. And I appreciate you and Adam for being part of those leaders in the movement.
All right. Vonda McDaniel, president of the Nashville Labor Council, co-executive director of the Highlander Research and Education Center. Garrett Stark, also co-executive director of Highlander. Thank you both for your time.
Bye.
We're going to take a break, folks. We will be right back with the rest of the Valley Labor Report. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by LaborNotes. LaborNotes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about LaborNotes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you're tuning in, go ahead and like the stream, subscribe to the channel, give us 5 stars if you're listening to us as a podcast. Send us a text message if you like what you are hearing. 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. Appreciate everybody for hanging out with us. I think I've enjoyed the show so far. We've got some more to go. Adam, I think, don't you have some plugs?
Oh, yes. Let me think about that. I think I do have some plugs. This afternoon is going to be a spring fling at Campus 805 in Huntsville. Indivisible is putting that on. There's going to be a lot of organizations and political candidates and games and stuff for the kiddos. So that should be a fun afternoon. I'll be out there tabling. I know plenty of other folks will be as well. So if you're local and you are here in the Huntsville area, I hope you'll check that out this afternoon. I think there's supposed to be some rain moving in this afternoon, so hopefully it doesn't rain us out. But definitely come check that out. It's 2 to 5 p.m. at Campus 805. Good family friendly event to connect with different groups. And then let's see what else we got going on here. I do know that on April 28th, which is Workers' Memorial Day, I will have an event in Tuscaloosa. It is a joint partnership between Alabama Arise and the League of Women Voters of Alabama. And it is going to be a Common Sense Economics for Alabama workshop. And we're going to talk a little bit about why the economy is broken for most of us and how we can fix that. So we'll be looking into economic inequality. We'll look a little bit into Alabama and how Alabama's tax and budget system works. Arise just put out its tax and budget handbook, the new edition, something that gets updated every 10 years. So, a big project just got put out. You can find that at alarise.org. Really looking forward to that workshop in Tuscaloosa on the 28th. You can go to the Alabama Arise website or Facebook and find more details on that. It's going to be at Grace Presbyterian Church that evening. Lots of stuff happening across the state on May Day, including here in Huntsville. There will be an event at Campus 805 as well from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Lots of stuff going on that day. There will be more to come. I think there will be more announcements next week about different actions happening across the state over the next couple weeks. Please do let us know if there's anything going on, especially those of you outside of Alabama who we, may not know as much about what's going on in your neck of the woods. We've got listeners, of course, in New Orleans and Chattanooga, and around the country online and through other radio stations as well. So definitely let us know what's going on. Leave us a voicemail, send us a text. We really love to get those. If you've got an action, you've got a rally, you've got a petition you're working on, anything that you're working on that's going to help working people and help build our power in the community, we'd like to know about it. So definitely do hit us up. And of course, LaborNotes always has great trainings. We're talking to LaborNotes in overtime this afternoon or later this morning. Really looking forward to that. You can always find their trainings at their website, labornotes.org. Definitely bookmark that.
I was in Tennessee yesterday, and while in the state, I decided to drop by the picket line. I was not even planning to do any videos, but somebody asked me, he was like, "Oh, are you going to do a video, do on-location reporting or something?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I guess I should."
You should, yeah.
While I'm here, I'm already here. I already drove all the way out here, so I may as well take a video. So here's that video. Let's play clip 1.
All right, howdy folks. I am here on location here in Oak Ridge, Knoxville area. Is that right?
Oak Ridge, Tennessee, yeah.
Oak Ridge, Tennessee, at the picket line that's put on by the Knoxville Building and Construction Trades Council. They are trying to get Barnard Construction and Kairos to agree to a project labor agreement as they're building small modular nuclear reactors, right? We've got somebody here on the picket line who's going to be talking to us about the informational picket. Could you introduce yourself, give us your name, the union that you're with, and why you're out here?
I'm with the Iron Workers, Local 384. I'm out here because union workers and, more importantly, local workers have built energy in this area for decades. This is their work. They get paid a fair wage, and we want to keep that going with all this new energy work coming to Oak Ridge and the Knoxville area. It's important that these jobs, there's a lot of jobs coming, that's great, but if they're not, paying a fair wage, fair benefits, a good contract, giving them, rights that workers deserve to do this work, then it doesn't matter how many jobs come to this area, it's not really doing any good.
So right now, Barnard Construction does not have a PLA. Do they have any union workers on this project?
There's a few contractors on the job that are union. It's because nobody else in the area does the kind of work they do.
Right.
They call on us when they absolutely need the expertise that we provide. But all of these jobs should be well-paying, should benefit the community rather than exploit it.
Absolutely. Why are they saying that they're not negotiating a PLA?
That's a good little mystery, actually. It's a question we've asked. We have not got an answer back. We thought we were getting some conversation going. That hasn't happened, so we're ramping up our picket a little bit. We'll take a look.
Yeah, we got Scabby the Rat here. It's a pretty big one.
Yeah, 28 foot.
28 feet.
Yeah, it's a good rat.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, but it is.
What are you hoping that this informational picket does?
A couple of things. One, makes the community aware that, hey, these jobs are not yours right now. They could be. And that's what we want. And two, just to get the attention of Kairos and Barnard, hey, we haven't forgotten about the community or the people to talk to if they want the community to benefit. And it's time to do that.
And talking about the community benefit, that means that like some of these non-union contractors, they're coming from out of the locality, right?
Yeah, you'll have some locals working here, but yeah, for the most part, these are not local contractors hiring local workers.
Right.
These are out-of-town contractors hiring some local workers, still at subpar wages, and out-of-town workers who take that money back to whatever community they come from, rather than this one. If anybody's interested at all in coming and standing with us for your community, please come out. We're all inclusive here. We're unions. We want everybody to be represented, and if there's something about these projects that you want to see, we want to see it. This is your community. This is our community. We're no different.
A lot of the funds that are going to build this are taxpayer money. Isn't that right?
Yeah. Some of that money's taxpayer money, as well as there's some taxpayer money buying the energy and the material from these sites that when they are actually up and running, and that's unfortunate that taxpayers are not able to help pay living wages to their own community.
All right, Justin, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Also on the picket line was Bo Hawk. Bo Hawk, you'll remember, is a candidate for the mayor of Knox County, running as a Democrat. I believe he's unopposed for the Democratic nomination. He's also a representative for the Knoxville Building and Construction Trades Council. I asked him why he was on the picket line yesterday. Here's what he said, clip 2.
All right, we just talked to Justin about the informational picket here. We also have Bo Hawk, a candidate for Knox County mayor, who is on the picket line as well, probably wearing a few different hats, but interested in his here as a candidate for mayor of Knox County.
Well, part of it is my ironworker hat, because I'm also with Ironworkers Local 384 and working for the building trades out here. I'm trying to stand with our brothers and all the other crafts, the building trades, and I'm here as a candidate because, this is already what I've been doing. This is what I'm going to continue to do, is stand with workers. And I think that we've got to make sure to keep getting the message out there that the community, anytime, tax dollars are being spent on projects, they should go toward good union jobs for the benefit of the community and local hire for the people that live here. So we're not just sending our money somewhere else. We got to take care of the people in our communities.
Have any of your fellow candidates for Knox County mayor said anything about this or been to the picket line, anything like that?
No, they have not, and I know because I've been out here every day. So if they've said anything about it, I hadn't heard it, but they have not. They haven't been out here.
What about other local political leaders? I talked to Justin earlier. He said that some of this is taxpayer money that's funding this construction and these nuclear reactors, and so there's a very clear touch point to public policy and politics, and so you would think that local political leaders would have opinions.
Yeah, locally, not much. Former city councilman and vice mayor of Knoxville, Andrew Roberto, has shown up here, but other than that, the only electeds have been one Republican state house rep, Monty Fritz. He's come out here a couple of times because he has some connection with labor. But other than that, I've yet to see anybody from, I'd really like to see somebody from Anderson County or from the city of Oak Ridge to actually show up.
Any federal level people?
No.
All right. Well, Bo Hawk is a candidate for Knox County mayor. Anything else that you wanted to add?
If you live in Knox County and my message resonates with you as far as making sure that Knox County is a place that workers can continue to thrive and live here and have a good life with a good job, then I'd be honored to secure your vote and your support this general election August 6th.
All right, roll tide.
All right, they almost got beat up saying roll tide up there after that, but I didn't record that part. Didn't want to engage in the union thug stereotypes.
Right. Yeah, it's a spicy thing to say in Knox County.
Yeah. No, I did that mainly to antagonize. I was wearing literally wearing a red shirt, and people were like, "Hey, what are you doing here? Why are you here in a red shirt? This is Tennessee, don't you know?"
Mm-hmm.
So
gotta bust out the orange.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah, so there you go. Looking forward to seeing them be able to secure a PLA, and hopefully some of the political leaders respond.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you just remind folks, what is a project labor agreement?
A project labor agreement is an agreement between the local Building and Construction Trades Council and the developer that just sets wages and working conditions and training requirements and safety requirements and things like that. It does not say, or at least does not have to say, that only union members can work on this job. It sets the floor for all the contractors who want to bid on the project, right? So once the floor is set, non-union contractors can bid on that. They just have to agree to pay good wages, have health care, give their workers those benefits and contributions, and make sure that their workers are trained to the union standard, that they use union standard, safety protocols and things like that. And so, but the problem with that is that the non-union contractors don't want to do that. So they fight PLAs, and they don't want to have a PLA because they don't want to have to pay their workers union standards. They don't want to have union safety protocols because it takes a little bit more time. Sometimes it can take a little bit more money. But really what it means is it's less money in the pockets of the owners, right? And so they don't want to do that. And they don't want their workers to have a little bit more power. And so that's what that's about. So thank you for that. A lot of people don't know what a project labor agreement is. I forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really a big deal. It impacts people's quality of life, and if we're going to have new development, new construction, it should be good union jobs, or at least good, safe jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're non-union, we should get real quality out of that. And just want to point out that Alabama is one of, I believe, about 24 states that ban PLAs on public projects within the state. Obviously, federal is different, but what a real shame, right? To think about all the projects that the state of Alabama and local school districts, local city and county governments engage in, how we could raise the floor. We could raise the conditions of the entire construction industry, really, and really grow the economy from the bottom up. It's a real shame. I know people spend a lot of time talking about right to work, and it's very popular in a state like Alabama among union folks to say we need to repeal right to work, and that's fine. I agree. But repealing the ban on PLAs honestly might have more of an immediate impact in terms of growing working class power.
Yeah, absolutely. Every day across the South, workers are killed on the job, stolen from, discriminated against, or sexually harassed. Sometimes their employers are caught. These are last week's stories. This is Boss Watch. Boss Watch. In Alabama, the U.S. Department of Labor has cited a Huntsville-based home builder with 8 serious safety violations after an investigation into a worker's fatality in December of 2025 found that the employer exposed construction workers to multiple safety hazards during groundwork prep. You will not be surprised to learn also that this contractor is not union. Investigators with the department's Occupational Safety and Health Administration learned that workers for Breland Homes Incorporated were installing a sewage drain pipe in a Madison County subdivision when a trench collapsed on a construction laborer. Trench collapses are one of the most common, but also one of the most understood safety concerns on construction sites. People know about trench collapses, people know how dangerous they are, and they know how to stop them. And contractors like Breland Homes don't care to prevent them. OSHA concluded that Breland Homes had allowed the decedent, the person who died, to work in an unprotected and unsupported section of the trench. In addition, OSHA found multiple safety violations, including failure to train workers to recognize unsafe conditions in trenching, allowing workers to conduct duties without protective helmets, and permitting employees to conduct work with a damaged ladder. OSHA cited Breland Homes with 8 serious violations and proposed $115,000 in penalties. Breland Homes has 15 business days from the receipt of its citation and penalties to comply. In Louisiana, actually, I thought that I had another one here. Give me just a second. Here it is. In Louisiana, the Carl Star Group is going to pay $300,000 to settle an EEOC disability discrimination lawsuit. The Carl Star Group, which is a Tennessee-based manufacturer of specialty tires and wheels, but operating in St. Louis, will pay $300,000. According to the lawsuit, since at least January of 2020, Carl Star denied opportunities to manufacturing employees in Tennessee and South Carolina when the company learned that they were lawfully taking certain prescription medications, including narcotics and opioids, for the treatment of disabilities, even after the employees were medically cleared to perform their job duties. The suit also alleged that Carl Star failed to consider or provide the workers with reasonable accommodations to the company's drug testing and substance abuse policy, which would enable the workers' employees to work while lawfully using their prescribed medication. If you want to get the rest of Boss Watch, subscribe to the newsletter, TVLR.fm. That is going to be it for the first half of the program. You can keep listening to the program, though, finding us on Facebook and YouTube at The Valley Labor Report. We're going to be talking to LaborNotes about how to build a union reform caucus. We're going to be talking to the National Staff Organization about why they sanctioned the Indiana State Teachers Association. So stay tuned for that conversation. If you don't, though, we really appreciate your time. You can find us online at TVLR.fm. You can donate to the program at TVLR.fm/donate. And find us on Facebook, YouTube, The Valley Labor Report. But if you don't do that, we appreciate your time, and we will see you next week. All right. We're off the radio now. Appreciate everybody hanging out. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Overtime.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, now also airing in Minneapolis and Chicago, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people. My name is Jacob Morris, and my co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. You can also send us a text at the same number. That's 844-899-8857, or a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. Union Gus in the chat mentions that PLAs do not have to be building specific. We were just talking about project labor agreements, and that apparently in Portland, Oregon, they are considering using a PLA format to set standards for things like staffing levels inside of homeless shelters, like for the staff of the homeless shelter, pay for caseworkers and other shelter staff. About a third to a half of our homeless services are union. So that's really cool. I've never heard of project labor agreements being used in a non-construction format. So I think that's
reminds
really
me of a community benefits agreement in a way. Yeah, very similar in some ways. I like it. Thanks
Very
for
cool.
sharing that.
Yeah, appreciate that. You can also, folks can hang out with us in the YouTube chat or the Facebook chat, and we try to check those out during the program. We have on the line the national president of the National Staff Organization, Brad Dargin. Brad, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I really appreciate it.
All right, good afternoon, Jacob. And Adam, good to see you again.
Absolutely. Been a long time, but it's good to have you on the
It's
show
been a while.
today. Unfortunately, I'm not glad to hear some of the news you have to share, but yeah, I really appreciate you making some time this morning.
No problem.
So for folks who might not know, before we jump into this specific incident, can you explain what the National Staff Organization is and what your members do?
Sure. So the National Staff Organization is made up of the employees of the various, quote, teacher unions around the country. So we're the staff that are hired by the teachers unions to go out and negotiate contracts, process grievances, analyze budgets, do communications activities and communications reports, lobby the legislators, etc. So we're that group of employees they hire to do the work. So thus, at some point, 54 years ago, the employees felt they needed their own union. So they formed the National Staff Organization. So right now we represent about 4,000 union staffers in 48 states.
That's a pretty big number of people. I knew that y'all represented most of the teachers union staff, but I didn't realize it was as extensive as 48 of the states. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And
Correct.
So your union, I think that's probably enough kind of preamble. I think people kind of get an idea of what the NSO is at this point. So your union recently imposed sanctions on the Indiana State Teachers Association. And I want to talk to you about that means, but could you talk about why the NSO imposed sanctions in the first place? Like what has the Indiana State Teachers Association done?
So basically what the executive director and the state president of the Indiana State Teachers Association has done is attack the Indiana Professional Staff president. Now, Indiana Professional Staff is our affiliate. That's the staff who are employed in Indiana, mostly field and headquarters type staff. So what they've done is they've gone after the president and vice president of that particular affiliate. And I do have them here on the side of me, so in case you want to talk to them at some point. But what they've done is they are attempting to terminate them based on their involvement in what we consider protected concerted activities. So more specifically, there's the executive director wants to restructure the way the field staff work. And the Indiana PSO has taken the position that some of the changes are mandatory subjects of bargaining, and he is refusing to negotiate those changes with them. So them being the unionists that they are, they do what every unionist does. They begin to lobby the employer, the board of directors, local presidents, et cetera, relative to their working conditions. And we consider such to be a protected concerted activity. The executive director and the state president are upset that they've gone this route. So thus now they are accusing them of interfering in the operations of the organization. So thus they're currently on suspension with pay, but on Monday there's a hearing that could result in their termination.
Wow.
So the sanctions that we've imposed is to let every union staffer in the country know, whether they're part of NSO or not, as that we don't want you going to Indiana. We don't want you going there to do shared staffing projects. We don't want you applying for jobs there. It's our way of letting union people know that this is a toxic work environment.
Right. Right. And so, yeah, if the state president is there, I'd love to hear from him and about, you know, was that a surprise to you that the executive director and the leadership of the ISTA was willing to take that route? Because at this point, it doesn't even seem like, you know, at least from what I'm hearing, that the NSO affiliate in Indiana is even on principle opposed to the changes. It's just that the changes need to be negotiated, and we need to ensure that, you know, the proper procedure is taken, and that the current employees are able to, you know, that things are fair for them. But it doesn't sound to me like it's an on principle even opposition to the proposed policy. It's just that a recognition that, you know, you have to negotiate as the employer.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, surprise. You asked if we were surprised. No, but not unexpected. I mean, when these people get titles and power, they act like any Fortune 500 CEO does. They want their way. And how dare this union get in our way? And this union happens to be a union of staff. And we look at ourselves as the last bastion of hypocrisy, to avoid hypocrisy within the union world. We hold these union employers accountable to union values and union principles. And yes, this is a matter of negotiations at this point. So you got it exactly right.
Right. I'd be interested in hearing from the state NSO affiliate president on this, because I'm sure that, you know, as you've been kind of lobbying and talking to the local presidents of the union that you work for and talking to teachers, that these are people that you have really, really deep relationships with, and that this is an organization, a union that you have a lot of pride in working for, and that you know, a deep connection to. I mean, I'm curious how you're kind of dealing with this, you know, I mean, a huge attack on you for really doing your job as a unionist.
Yeah. So this is Rick. Can you see him? Well, all right. Perfect.
Yes.
So this is Rick. Rick is the president of the Indiana Professional Staff Organization, and so he can kind of tell you exactly what you want to know. But I mean, in the end, yes, he is doing his job as we expect any union president to do, which is make sure that the working conditions are negotiated, and we don't allow management to unilaterally implement anything on us that we feel would be detrimental to the members' general well-being as an employee.
Yeah, Rick, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. I think I heard you asking Brad earlier if he was surprised by this move, and like he said, it's unfortunate that they would go down this route. But I was definitely surprised that this was the incident that they chose, because we were very much just doing our jobs in this meeting. You know, very, very standard for us as field staff to be in the role of advising membership. And so, you know, as we've held, you know, there's just no case here for discipline. We were just engaging in our normal behavior. So, you know, to then find out that really, in their own words, you know, this is about the year-long discussion over the restructure that has been described. You know, it's just entirely out of bounds. Right. We have the right. I know Brad's already said this. Like we absolutely, as we would expect every union everywhere to have the right to discuss our working conditions with our employer, and that just has to be core and fundamental.
Rick, how are the membership of the ISTA, the Indiana State Teachers Association, how are they reacting to this?
You know, we've received a lot of support. A lot of members are speaking out, and obviously, you know, I try to keep to speaking for my members and the members of PSO, but we've had a significant outpouring from members of ISTA who respect what we're standing up for and are disheartened to see their union acting in this way.
Right. So, Brad, the sanctions that your union has imposed on the Indiana State Teachers Association, among them is a call to other NSO staffers not to participate in shared staffing events. Now, I think that probably people can kind of pick up on what that means, but I'm assuming that among state teachers unions, it's maybe not uncommon for them to share staff. If the Indiana State Teachers Association, for instance, maybe has a conference and they need to borrow like 2 or 3 people from Illinois for 2 weeks or something.
No, Jacob. It's deeper than that. It's not
Okay.
a conference, but if they have a crisis, like a legislative crisis of some sort,
right?
Then they would call on the neighboring states to kind of loan them a couple of staff to help, maybe knock doors or come help lobby at the legislature. Not just it's not as routine as the work at a conference. This is to help them when they're in a crisis. They can call on shared staffing, and what I'm calling for is a boycott on such.
Gotcha. And so that calling for a boycott from other staff of state teachers unions affiliates, calling on them not to participate in shared staffing projects with the Indiana State Teachers Association. Has the ISTA reacted to these sanctions being imposed on their organization?
They've not reacted in writing, but we have heard some kind of scuttle from the people on the inside that whether they give the impression they're not concerned, but we kind of believe otherwise. So we think that it'll have some impact. Depends how long this is drawn out, because not only will it be the boycott on the shared staffing, but it'll be a boycott on vacant positions they may try to advertise. So if they terminate Rick and Anita, they're going to have to try to fill those vacancies at some point. Now, if they post those vacancies, we're going to be right on top of those vacancies, putting out, you don't want this job in here, and putting links so they can click the links and go to information that we publish, that so they can know why you would not want to work in Indiana at this present time.
So, National President, how can people support if maybe you're not a member of NSO? Are there any ways that listeners can support your members?
Sure. Right now, the biggest thing we need is people to go to our social media pages. We've got a lot of information on there in terms of petitions and direct emails to going to the executive director of Indiana and the leadership. So we need more of those things happening. We follow our page. We're a National Staff Organization on Facebook. Our hashtag is Bring Them Back. And so thus we get a lot of publicity out of that, a lot of movement on that. We're starting to pick up some of the other unions in the Indiana area, starting to pick up. We've actually sent some of our Indiana union members out to support the United Steelworkers who are locked out. What's the area right now? What's the name of the town?
Well, actually, it's throughout northern Indiana. So there's actually
they're locked out by BP. So we've sent some people out to help that out, and so thus that's it.
All right.
National. So we all. The last thing is we all work for unions. We want unions to succeed, but at the same time, we can't sacrifice union principles and union goals.
Right.
To allow the management of these particular unions to just run rampant over the people who they employ.
National President Brad Darjan, thank you so much for your time as well. Indiana Professional Staff Organization President Rick, thank you for your time. Very sorry that you're going through this, and we're wishing you luck on Monday.
We'll keep you posted, and we appreciate your support.
Please do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate
that. Thank you. Have a great day.
I want to appreciate National Staff Organization for standing behind these members and taking various forms of action. And really glad to hear there's more connections being built in Indiana. Hope to see a lot of solidarity from all of our labor siblings in Indiana and beyond, because it's really important that these organizations practice what they preach. Right? You're out here trying to convince teachers and custodians and cafeteria workers to give some of their money every month in dues, on the hope that it is a good thing to make their lives better and their coworkers' lives better. And so it's a very special, position of responsibility that folks have when they have these big titles like executive director or state president. That's a lot of responsibility, and the way you conduct yourself and the way you treat the people who work for you says a lot about your real values and says a lot about your leadership. So, disappointed to hear this in Indiana. Appreciate the hard work of NSO to represent and support these members, but it's always really an embarrassment, I think, when folks in our movement or people that are supposed to be in our movement really betray those values. And so anytime we see a staff union conflict, we know it can be tricky and complicated, but at the end of the day, if you lead an organization that's supposed to be a working class organization, you should lead it with working class solidarity and lead it with those values.
Alexander Ledgerwood in the YouTube chat says, proud Florida staff organization member here. We stand with you. Scott Holdison, who is a founder of the former Reform Caucus within the UAWD, Unite All Workers for Democracy, now a leader in a new organization that was formed out of the dissolution of UAWD Members Action within the UAW. Also a state Senate candidate in Indiana, I understand. Scott Holdison says, I recently heard about this situation when speaking with one of your co-workers in northern Indiana. This is a very troubling development by a union who should be respecting workers' rights. Indeed. I believe that we've got in the Zoom now Lisa Xu with LaborNotes. Lisa is a staff organizer at LaborNotes. Lisa, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate you taking the time. You recently helped to put together a guide to building a reform caucus in a union. Could you remind people what a reform caucus is?
Yeah. First, hi to Scott Holdison, who I organized with in UAWD, which was a union reform caucus, and so is UAW Member Action that Scott leads now. So right, what is a reform caucus? It's basically just a group of union members who are organizing together to change their union for the better, to improve it, to transform it into a union that actually fights on behalf of its members. Is everything? Can you still hear me?
Yes, yeah. I can hear you fine.
Great.
You sound great.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's basically what it is. I'm sure it's not like a common term, right, that you would know unless you've been in the labor movement and you've heard about groups like UAW Member Action or Teamsters for Democratic Union, or in the Chicago Teachers Union, CORE, the famous Reform Caucus there. So in this guide that LaborNotes just put out, which you can check out at labornotes.org/caucus, CAUCUS, we have the definition up top, just trying to demystify it a little bit for people. That's what it is.
So Lisa, why build a reform caucus if you have a union that needs to be reformed? You've got a union that for one reason, there are many, many reasons that a union might not be kind of up to snuff, where I would like it to be, where you would like it to be. Maybe the leadership is incompetent and they have a very low density rate and very little power. Maybe they are corrupt and they are, using their position of leadership to sort of, for favors from the boss, swindle the employees that they are supposed to represent and trying to push bad contracts on the membership. Maybe, any number of reasons. Why should a person, instead of quitting the union or trying to decertify the union or just hoping it fails and then maybe a new, better union can take its place, why build a reform caucus instead of doing that other thing?
Yeah, good question. I think we actually do, at LaborNotes, run across many members who are like, I'm at the end of my rope, just I'm going to decertify this union. I'm going to leave the labor movement. But if every would-be reformer thought that way, the labor movement would be in worse shape. If we didn't have the Scott Holdesons and all the members of Teamsters for Democratic Union, we never would have had the tremendous changes we've seen in the United Auto Workers or the Teamsters Union or any number of educator unions. We wouldn't be seeing a lot of the resurgence we're seeing now in grocery, which is a sector I cover for LaborNotes as a writer. I think it is, I have a lot of sympathy for people who have been, really trying to, do what they can within their unions or just burned out, really, really discouraged. But a lot of these union members also have never heard of a union reform caucus. They've never met a member of TDU, Teamsters for Democratic Union, or a member of a teachers union that's been fighting to transform their union. And when you know that's a possibility, when you know you can get together with like-minded members and make changes like actually fighting for a contract, running for union office, getting some undemocratic rule changed. When you know that these things are actually possible to do in a union, I think a lot of committed labor movement activists will choose to stay and organize in some kind of reform group.
So then, in what situations would it be good? Might it be advisable to kind of go down that path and start trying to build a reform caucus?
Yeah. There is this flow chart in our guide that I recommend people check out. It starts, our union isn't fighting for its members. Do we need a reform caucus? And, sometimes people haven't tried, existing channels, but a lot of times people have. They've tried talking to leadership. They've tried, making a point at a union meeting, and they try working through existing committees in the union, and they find that they're shut down. They find that it's just one person kind of going it alone isn't working out, right? They find that leadership is really not interested in new ideas. So that's kind of the first step. If you're pretty sure you're at the point where more organized action needs to be taken, then you organize, you have one-on-one conversations with like-minded members, you meet together, you think about what is an organizing issue you could take on? Is it an issue that leadership has been neglecting, that you could take some kind of action on together to show that a different kind of union is possible? And then once you have done that organizing, you kind of grow your group, you find more and more like-minded members, then you might be at the point where you could say, we should make this into kind of a longer term organized group, a project, and we could call it a reform caucus. And then the flow chart kind of takes you through, like deciding on a common vision, what the group agrees to work on, and then kind of going through, a few other considerations. But those would be some of the first steps. And you also want to recruit, in the same way you would if you were doing like a union organizing drive, like a group of an organizing committee, a group of leaders who are representative of the workplace as well.
So the first thing that your flowchart encourages people to do in the event that they join the union and it's not kind of to their liking is to try existing channels. So why should I do that instead of joining the union as maybe a newly christened labor militant who's very confident that my leadership is doing everything wrong and I know the right way. Why shouldn't I just immediately, after joining the union and being convinced of the need for more militancy, begin a reform caucus and start publicly opposing the leadership? Why should I try existing channels before I do that?
Yeah, good question. I do think you're right. I do think there are situations where you can probably tell pretty quickly off the bat that something needs to change. I wouldn't recommend that people just keep banging their head against the wall. But that being said, I think it's important for other people you're organizing with, right, to know that those channels have been exhausted and that you are dealing with union leadership that is not interested in representing the members, that's not interested in working together to put the union, on a better path, go in a better direction. I think like another thing to think about that's related to some of what we discussed in the flow chart is just kind of being seen as a leader already, who's out there doing the kind of work that you would like the union to be doing, or making the points in the meeting that other people might agree with. So it can be a way of kind of also trying to find like-minded people as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I really think that I completely agree with the flowchart. I think it's just so important to make a good faith effort, right? Because I think that in many instances, or at least in some, I kind of put maybe a sort of a straw man vision of somebody who's like, a young whippersnapper, greenhorn, who's like totally convinced that the old heads just have no idea what they're doing. But the reality is that most people in the labor movement, even if they are maybe like less competent, less ideological, or less committed than I think they should be, it's just not a super lucrative kind of position to occupy. I mean, being the local president of any number of the thousands of locals that there exist in the country is just generally, it's not, a super easy job. It's not a job where you're thanked all the time. And so a lot of times people are just kind of doing the best that they can. And they're also in that position for a reason, right? I mean, a local president generally is an elected position, which means that your coworkers have at least enough confidence in them that there's been nobody else to challenge them successfully before. And so if you come out the gate immediately banging on about how terrible the president is, well, guess what? Like, they have more respect than you do, and you're going to lose ultimately. And so, and there do exist in a lot of places, even in kind of unions that are doing less than we think they should be, there are committees that you can join that you can try to do work in, and then, like you said, become a leader who is doing the things that the local president is not doing, and maybe you're able to kind of push the local president to do more, or maybe the local president retire and you can take that over. I mean, the labor movement, the union, is not something that I think should be seen immediately as the enemy. Right? I mean, only as a last resort should we see the leadership of the union as an enemy. Sometimes they are, but, we should try to do things in good faith as if they were our comrades and sisters and brothers.
Totally. I agree with that. I think, we try to be cognizant in this Reform Caucus guide, it's not one size fits all. The best organizers really understand their own context. They understand the union they're in, they understand the workplaces they're in, what their coworkers care about, right? How their coworkers view union leadership. So I totally agree with that, right? The counterpoint, though, is that in the unions I've had some experience with, like in the United Auto Workers, and also in the United Food and Commercial Workers, which I report on. There unfortunately are some local leaders that are really, they've it's like a dynasty, right? They've been there too long. In the UFCW, you can actually, in the Reform Caucus, Essential Workers for Democracy, they have like this sheet on their website that shows like how highly paid some of these local leaders are, making like so much money. It's 10 times more than like a grocery worker would make, or even more than that. So I think in if you're in a situation like that, it's really important to know how to organize a reform caucus. I think it's that's kind of the only chance of changing leadership and changing the way the union is working.
Scott mentioned in the chat just one more comment on existing channels. He says using existing channels is a good way to get a better understanding of how the union is supposed to work. Not following those processes can lead to dead ends. And so I think that's another good point on that. But let's say, okay, so we've done that in our hypothetical scenario. The people that we're talking to, they've done that. They've tried the existing channels. They've joined the committees. They've hit dead ends. They're not getting anywhere. Union leadership is opposing them and not supporting them. And so the next step then is, like you alluded to earlier, to try to find an issue where you can organize independently of union leadership to win gains from the boss on a workplace issue and build a representative organizing committee. So that, can you flesh that out a little bit? What does that like, organizing independently of the union's structures, and how can you do that effectively?
Such a great question. It's a challenge, right? Because if you're not part of the official union structure, you don't have, you have to kind of build a lot of, you have to gather information and do a lot of organizing from scratch. So like one important thing to think about is, how are you going to contact your coworkers? If you're in a big workplace, you might need to contact people across a bunch of different departments or shifts or work sites, sometimes even different cities. So we talk in the packet about skills for list building. How do you build a list of your coworkers so that you can even begin the task of organizing an action. But I have in mind an example. I don't remember this one's in the packet, but the Philly Teachers Caucus. There was, this is like a common sort of issue, right? There was like a workplace safety issue, and the union leadership wasn't addressing it. And what they did was they individually organized actions that they invited people to. They organized phone banks where they called parents. They got the community mobilized. You could hold independent rallies, independent marches on the boss. And I say by that I mean independent of union leadership. And reach out to them, invite them, try to get them on board. Like, we've been saying, try to work together if you can, because there also have been many instances of caucuses and reformers successfully pushing leadership to take initiative on these issues, right? But if they decide not to, get the rank and file involved just independently on your own. And I think that was this instance in the Philly Teachers Reform Caucus was successful. They ended up pushing the school district to give them what they needed.
Right. And then being able to lead efforts like that to actually win something for the rank and file kind of outside of the union officialdom, that gives people more credibility, and that gives the rank and file members more of a reason to trust this different group that is inside the union, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The danger, I think, you're talking about like a young whippersnapper coming in with no experience and just immediately, not, having no credibility necessarily compared to existing leadership. This is a really important way to grow and build credibility and show that, there are leaders in the union. They may not be elected yet, but there are worker leaders in the union who have a different way, a different vision, different way of running the union. And, they can win, they can deliver what leadership is failing to deliver, or they can influence leadership to do to act more effectively, or more openly, more transparently. That's another really important thing that reform caucuses often fight for as well.
So once a reform caucus is formed, maybe you first get kind of like a loose coalition of people that take on an independent campaign and is able to win. And so, subsequent to that, you need to kind of formalize the structure a little bit. And, it doesn't, you mentioned the flowchart not to get too bogged down in the bylaws and whatever. But say you've got this a little bit more of a formal thing. Maybe it has a name. What are some tips for being effective as an existing union reform caucus? Like, how can people that are in that situation now, maybe perhaps, within TDU or within Members Action in the UAW or Essential Workers for Democracy, like people who are already part of these organizations, how can reform caucuses be effective within their unions?
And that's a big question too. I think yeah, again, I think there's not one size fits all, but we talk about this a lot in the packet, like, just within your group, I think having a common vision and having some consensus within the group on the priorities to pursue, and making sure that you're organizing in such a way as to continuing such that you're continuing to bring people in and appealing to an ever increasing swath of the membership, and you have to do that by organizing around issues that they care about. Sometimes there are procedural issues that reform caucuses that might not be widely known about yet by the membership, but reform caucuses help to popularize, right? Like one member, one vote. That was an issue that TDU and reformers in the UAW organized around for many decades. Now that there is one member, one vote in the Teamsters and the United Auto Workers, I think many more union activists are aware that can be an important reform to organize around. But those caucuses have always also really centered contract issues, right? That can be the one time union members are really paying attention to what's going on in the union, pushing for there to be an actual contract campaign, organizing vote no campaigns when a contract shouldn't be ratified, when members should continue to fight for a better contract. So yeah, I would say within the group, maintain your focus and always be thinking about like what is it that members really want to see happen in the union, keep your focus on that.
Lisa Xu is a staff organizer for LaborNotes. Do you have any other tips for people who are wanting to build or maintain effective union reform caucuses?
Yeah, I'm just going to plug LaborNotes a little bit in general. So, definitely take a look at this Reform Caucus Guide, labornotes.org/caucus, CAUCUS. But LaborNotes in general is just a great place to look for more resources on how to organize and specifically on how to be an effective union reform organizer. So if you're coming to the LaborNotes conference in June, definitely check out the various panels and workshops we're going to have on building a union reform caucus. And, we're going to have reformers, reform activists, reformers in office on panels all over the conference. I think one of our plenary speakers is going to be a reform caucus activist. And check out our articles. We're always covering what reformers are doing in different unions. So learning about kind of the good examples of organizing in other reform caucuses, I think is a good place to start.
I want to echo those sentiments, Lisa, because as a young teacher, many years ago, getting into this movement, it was reading LaborNotes and following CORE, the Caucus of Rank and File Educators in Chicago, their successful strike in 2012. Like, I wish I had this guide back then, really. It would have been amazing. And I'm so happy y'all put this out now, though, because reading LaborNotes coverage of that strike and just following that struggle was really what helped get me in this labor movement and shaped my thinking and approach to this movement. And I really didn't know anybody in Alabama to talk to about this. Like, a lot of folks didn't know what the hell I was talking about when I said a reform caucus. And I think that is changing, but I just want to, really, really recommend folks use the resources that LaborNotes puts out there for folks. Definitely share the reporting that highlights these struggles and highlights the ways workers are coming together and building power on the job, with or without official blessing or with or without establishment support. It's so helpful to have those stories and just know that people can do it and people are doing it. So just because it hasn't happened with you yet or in your local yet or even in your region yet doesn't mean it's not possible. So there's a lot for me to think on with this guide. I'm looking forward to digging into it more and, of course, attending the conference and hearing from folks, real life participants in this. I'm wondering about scale and, some of the difficulties maybe in doing it at a local union level versus trying to scale it up to take on international leadership, or even looking at cross labor or cross union formations like regional or state labor federations. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics to it. But I just want to thank you, Lisa, and thank LaborNotes for putting this information out.
Yeah, thank you. We're really glad it's found an audience. I have heard more than one person say, "Oh, wish I had this when I actually started my caucus," but great to see it now. So we hope it'll encourage people and help people who are, not just at the beginning stages. We have advice in there for people who have been in caucuses for like 20 years, and we're also, it's a living document. We're hoping to improve it and update it continuously. So, send us some feedback if you disagree with what you see in it or something's missing.
All right. Lisa Xu, staff organizer for LaborNotes. Looking forward to seeing you in June. Hopefully, we'll be able to get you and some of your coworkers to come by the table that we're going to have with WCPT, a progressive radio station in Chicago that we are now airing on. We're going to have a table at the conference with them doing potentially some live stuff, potentially some live recordings there, but definitely some pre-taped interviews. So
awesome. Really glad you guys are going to be in Chicago. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks for taking the time. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number. We'll go ahead and open up the phone lines, 844-899-8857. You can give us a call if you're tuning in live or leave us a voicemail. If you are not, you can also send us a text message at the same number. We've got a really quick update on the Exalta campaign. We had Jared Greenia on a couple of weeks ago, an Exalta worker over in Michigan. That union drive was defeated ultimately, 184 no votes to 133 yes votes. There were 34 challenged ballots, and those 34 were not resolved because even if 100% of them had gone to the union would not have won. The voting took place on Tuesday and Wednesday. Macomb Daily has
you are now in the
reporting
host
on
room
this.
and can manage your callers from
So
the
if you want
call-in
to see a
studio
little bit
web
more
interface.
about it, you can. They talk about the union busters, the Cummings group, who was paid at least $4,000 a day to bust the union. We'll know at a later date the total expenditures for that campaign against the union. But Labor Lab, in an initial estimate, they said that they think that the employer spent at least $300,000. Wow. $300,000 to bust this campaign. UAW officials said that 78% of the workers signed authorization cards. So it was the
anti-union campaign that killed the support for the union. So I mean, really, really sad to see. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that I gave you all that update since we had somebody on a couple of weeks ago to talk about it.
Yeah, appreciate that. I know it's not good news to report, but it's it's important that we know how impactful these kind of approaches can be, and we're used to it here in the South. It doesn't seem to be as prevalent in some other parts of the country that are maybe a little more friendly towards labor unions and have a little bit more friendly politicians in office, but it's something we're really used to down here. I mean, it's kind of like the standard MO in the South is to go scorched earth, to hire, anti-union consultants, to intimidate folks, to spread misinformation, call in outside groups and allies, which is always ironic, right? Because the anti-union folks always say that the union are outside agitators, when inevitably they bring in their own outside agitators, whether it's business groups or these consultant creeps or whoever. And that's a challenge that we have to face, and it does seem daunting sometimes. But I just try to remind myself and remind others that workers have organized under worse conditions. Workers have organized under much more difficult conditions. Even as things continue to decline in this country for working people, and as conditions to organize get tougher, it is worth remembering. We've encountered worse, and we have been able to build power regardless. And so I just want to send our love and solidarity to those workers and encourage them to not give up, keep organizing, keep coming together. Because there is strength in numbers, and the more you work together, the more you can defeat this ultimately.
You heard about the DoorDash grandma last week, right, Adam?
I heard a little bit about it. I'm not on mainstream news as much as some folks, but I did hear. I heard there was a special delivery. Not sure what he ordered. Probably McDonald's, if I had to guess. It wasn't McDonald's.
It was McDonald's.
Okay. I've heard the president is a fan. I do remember him inviting the big football players with all those hamburgers and chicken nuggets.
Could you imagine going to the White House and they serve you I would be so upset. Like, I can get McDonald's at home, bro. Like, give me some steak. I just won the national championship.
All right, literally,
I would be so upset.
I mean, I would just say, I trust a meal that the White House chef can put together.
Yeah.
Like, surely
literally
that's a good
anything
chef.
else except for freaking McDonald's. I mean, I would be so upset about it. If I just won the national championship, I'm going to the White House. Maybe this is, for some of them, this is probably their first time in D.C. ever.
Right.
First time for sure meeting a president.
Right.
And the president I would be so upset.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I feel like even most children, like above 4 or so, would recognize, wait, that seems weird. That's a raw deal.
So this lady, the DoorDash grandma, came and she did this kind of stunt delivery of McDonald's to Donald Trump to talk about the no tax on tips policy. And so I pulled some of the stuff from the press conference that they did related to this, and we're going to react to it because it is just so gross. I mean, absolutely no hate to this woman. I mean, if I was in her position, I would have done it, and I have like zero bad things to say about her at all. But I mean, just the whole thing, the lack of interest, or the way that the president kind of puts her in a corner a little bit a few times, and we'll talk about that. The way that the media is totally uninterested in the course of this press conference in the situation of gig workers, which is what they're ostensibly there to talk about. No questions about gig. It was all questions about other stuff. And so that was, just totally disrespectful from the media. Complete lack of interest in the concerns of working people as it relates to the gig economy and tips and everything like that.
It's not like people haven't talked about these issues, right? I mean, even we've covered gig worker organizing on this show. We've, but beyond that, like gig workers have been speaking up, whether it's DoorDash or Uber or whatever the situation. Like people have been speaking up on about these conditions for years now. It's not
it's
like
insane.
A new thing necessarily.
So let's go ahead and play clip 4.
McDonald's.
Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you. I have your DoorDash order for you, Mr. President.
Oh, that's very nice. Look at this. This doesn't look staged, does it?
They're all your favorites.
That's right. These are good. DoorDash is doing a good job.
We
So,
try.
the reason for this is the fact that I heard you picked up an extra $11,000 that you didn't think it, because the tax bill was so big, the refund was the biggest you've ever had. Is that a correct statement?
Okay.
It definitely was.
Okay, let's pause it there for a second. So, did you catch, Adam, how she kind of hesitated there a little bit?
Yeah.
That's because the president said something wrong. She later, in an interview with Fox and Friends, because there was questions about that, like, how did you get how did this net you $11,000? I mean, that would require that you got a huge amount of money in tips, like something like $80,000 in tips, which is, I suppose, not literally impossible, but for a DoorDash driver in Arkansas, remember,
A little unlikely.
Not LA, a little unlikely. So the president says something that seems kind of strange, and so people look into it, and people are questioning it. Is that true? And you can tell there that she's like, it is. Later in Fox and Friends, she did say her total tips were $11,000. So maybe she got $1,000, maybe that she wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But that's like the max, right? And so, the president's here, and he does this throughout the press conference, putting her in an uncomfortable position because she doesn't want to disagree with the president, obviously. She doesn't want to, and so she just says yes, because there's a way that maybe those words kind of are correct. She got $11,000 and none of it was taken away in taxes. But just shows complete incuriosity, because he probably got some number that was, she got $11,000 in tips, and he just was so incurious that he thought that meant that was how much she kept in addition to what she would normally keep. Didn't do any critical thinking about what that would mean about her total income. And so on the Fox and Friends interview, she didn't say how much additionally over and above what she got last year that she got because of the no tax on tips. And so it's just, I feel so bad for her, and it makes me so upset about the way that she was treated by the president and his team, that she was put in that position. And we'll see over and over and over again throughout this press conference. He keeps trying. He keeps putting her in these uncomfortable positions. But that's why she was kind of hesitant about her response to that, is because that's not true. She did not keep $11,000 that she wouldn't have got otherwise. She got $11,000 in tips, none of which was taxed. Let's continue.
Yeah, I saved over $11,000 by not having to claim.
Was that surprising to you, actually?
It was very surprising. Very
It's a
surprising.
great big beautiful bill. And that doesn't include overtime in your case. This is only just based on what we did in terms of every other aspect of the tax bill, right?
Yes, sir.
So it was $11,000 saving.
Yes.
So here again, let's pause it. He doesn't understand anything, right? Because she's a gig worker. She's not a W-2. She doesn't get overtime. Even if she were to drive for DoorDash 60 hours in a week, she would not get overtime. But he doesn't know that. He doesn't care about that. He also doesn't care about the fact that, and he'll mention this later on in the program, or later on in this press conference, she started driving for DoorDash because her husband has cancer, and they went through all of her savings, even though they have insurance, and so she has no savings anymore, and she's having to drive for DoorDash as a retiree to get money to pay for her husband's cancer. And again, none of the media asks any questions about that. About like, well, maybe instead of giving her a little bit of a pittance by not taxing her tips, maybe her husband's health care should just be covered so that she doesn't have to reach into her savings and become bankrupt and have to drive for DoorDash as a retiree. Like, Mr. Trump, why don't we do that? Or, any other number of things other than retirees having to work for DoorDash. Let's continue.
And that's what it is, the tax cut. It's really, we call it the great big beautiful bill. We should call it the great big beautiful tax cut bill because it's tremendous amounts of money. And that's overtime. That's also on Social Security, as you know.
Yes.
And it's pretty amazing.
Yes, it is.
Well, you're really nice. Would you like to do a little news conference with me with these people? These are not the nicest people. They're not nice like you. You know that, right?
I'll do whatever you ask me to do, sir.
So the no tax on tips is something special, right?
It's very special.
And that's one that really pertains to you more than anything else.
Yes, sir. Yes.
It's fantastic. And so it's such an honor to meet you. And I think you voted for me, do you think?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, see, there you go. Pause again. She is so, she's so good. She's so professional. And she doesn't want to make this, and she said this in other interviews subsequent, she doesn't want to make it a partisan thing. She thinks this is a good policy, no tax on tips. She likes the policy. She wants to promote the policy. She's got what Trump doesn't have. She has message discipline, right? And he just refuses to allow her to have message discipline. He wants to exact, loyalty and acquiescence and, all of it, all of this other stuff. And she just wants to talk about the policy. Let's continue.
I heard you're a great supporter. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll put this over here. And why don't we have a news conference with the president?
Okay.
Want to do it?
Sure.
You don't have to say too much. I think they're looking about hormone straight and various other things. Do you have any questions?
All right, so there you go. So then they start they start the press conference, and again, there was no questions about the plight of gig economy workers. Why is it okay that DoorDash and Uber and all these companies the CEOs are making millions and millions of dollars while these employees who are obviously employees. It's so stupid. It's just like the Kalshi and the Poly Market saying that they're not betting platforms, right? It's so stupid. It's just insulting to everybody in the room that these people are pretending that she is not an employee of DoorDash, that Kalshi and Poly Market are pretending that they're not betting markets. It's just so stupid and insulting to people. But that's what they're doing. No questions from the media about the gig economy, about anything like that, about any other way that the Trump administration is harming or helping or doing anything about working class people working these gig economy. It's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. And yeah, I just don't understand it. I do not understand. It's not like Trump is somebody that you can't ask a question to if you're a DC reporter, right? You get all sorts of questions, all sorts of opportunities to ask him all sorts of things. Why don't you ask him about the gig economy, about gig workers? It's insane. But so we already saw how he puts her up into these uncomfortable positions. He does it again later in the press conference on a topic totally unrelated. Let's play clip 5.
They cheat. They can't get elected with their policy. So their policy is no good. They want to have, open borders. They want to have men playing in women's sport. Do you think that men should play in women's sports?
I really don't have an opinion on that.
You don't, I'll bet you do.
No, I'm here about no tax on tips.
Yeah.
So, they got message discipline. She should be a politician. Message discipline right there. She should run for something. But and it really is just disrespectful of the president to be doing this to her, to trying to rope her in to these social issues, in trying to turn her into a partisan warrior, when she is just a grandma trying to pay for her husband's cancer treatments, and she doesn't want all this, controversy. She wants to talk about this one policy, and he refuses to allow her to do that. And that's the way that he is. He has zero respect or interest in anybody other than himself, right? And we've got another clip from an event that he did later where, he really kind of continues the disrespect of this woman and what she was there to do. Let's play clip 6. So,
is it not working right?
That is not. That's not what I was wanting to do. So I guess we don't have that clip. But it was at a it was at an event later on when he was, continuing to promote the policy. He called the whole photo op that they just did tacky, and he was like, "Oh yeah, well, this is kind of what we have to do or whatever." So he says, quote, Sharon delivered McDonald's to the Oval Office. It was a little bit of to be honest, it was a little tacky. They come up with these crazy ideas like McDonald's, although that was the biggest ever on Google. They say number one ever. And the garbage truck. We do these things in politics. They're a little embarrassing. And so, just kind of being embarrassed to be seen with a working class person. But, that's who he is, right? So there you go. Gross. Vile, disrespectful. What else is there to say? Here's something else that's terrible. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of the Department of Defense,
Department of War, I've heard.
Department of War, that's right. He has been instructed his agencies to revoke their collective bargaining agreements. This was early in April 9th. This has been put off because of some court cases, but despite the fact that the court cases are still ongoing, the president has said to go ahead and start executing the revocation of these collective bargaining agreements. And so this is, another huge loss for federal employees. And so, the AFGE is obviously continuing to fight back against this. The national president, Reverend Everett Kelly, said that Secretary Hegseth's decision to terminate the union rights of hardworking individuals who support our military is a cowardly continuation of this administration's unlawful attack on federal employees' First Amendment right to belong to a union. For 50 years, these employees have exercised their union rights under several administrations during a global pandemic and throughout peacetime and wartime, including our most recent conflict with Iran. Our union has successfully challenged illegal attempts to strip our members of their union rights by terminating their collective bargaining agreements, and we will continue to do so. And so the question that I'm sure comes up for many federal employees in the Department of Defense at this point is what to do now. Should I stop paying dues to the union because they no longer, in an official, governmentally recognized capacity, represent me? The answer to that is emphatically no. Very, very much no. The union exists because its members say it exists. A union is just working people who are coming together in an organized fashion to make their lives better, particularly as it relates to their workplace. And so a union existing is not dependent on the government or your employer in any situation admitting that it exists or recognizing you or bargaining with you. The union existing is solely dependent on the membership saying it exists and acting in that way. So you do not have to have recognition. You do not have to have a collective bargaining agreement. And in fact, the Federal Unionists Network has been, there are lots of local unions who are participating in the Federal Unionists Network to try to implement new strategies to begin to act as a union even when you don't have those union rights. And it's also important to remember that the history of federal unionism goes back to before they had a right to exist. AFGE was founded in the 30s and 40s, I believe. Federal employees did not get union rights until the 60s, okay? Or the 70s even, potentially. I can't remember exactly when it was. It was around that period. And so you've got decades there where federal employees are fighting as a union to make their jobs and their lives better, particularly as it relates to the workplace, without recognition from the federal government. And so we can and we must continue to act as a union even when our employer says that we are not. And we can still win. Even outside of those, particular structures. I mean, there was a story out of the Corps of Engineers in New York where they were able to get the union there was able to get one of their members extended paid parental leave, even though extended parental leave, I don't think it was paid, but extended parental leave. Even though it was not in the contract, the management did not have to by any law or policy or anything, but they did because the membership all fought together for this employee and they were able to get management to back down. And so you can win those things if you come together as a union fighting for yourself and your fellow workers, whether or not you have recognition. The only thing that will come out of ending your membership, out of withdrawing from the union the needed funds, is that the union will become weaker. The union will be more likely to lose than it was yesterday before you left the union. There's not anybody else that's coming to save federal workers. There is not some idyllic, perfect, militant, ideological union that will come in and organize in the absence of AFGE or IFPTE or NIFI. That doesn't exist. So if AFGE and these other unions fall, the result will only be that workers have no union. And that is not better than workers having an imperfect union. It is simply not. And so, it's really important. And I mean, it's difficult to act like a union, to behave like a union when you don't have that official recognition. It makes it much harder. But, and it's not fair, right? But it also wasn't fair that for nearly half a century, federal workers had to organize without that recognition. It wasn't fair, right? It wasn't fair that the government killed mine workers at Blair Mountain who were standing up for their union rights. It wasn't fair that the government came in and broke the Pullman the Pullman strike in the 1890s. None of it's fair. But what needs to happen? And what needs to happen is that federal workers have to come together and organize and build their unions into even stronger bodies that can withstand these attacks from the Trump administration and even expand during the Trump administration, but certainly being ready to jump back whenever there is a more friendly administration that allows more organizing to happen. And there are lots of opportunities for, there are lots of people who believe that the union should still exist. And so there are people, no doubt, in your workplace that you can work with to continue the union and to build the union. But giving up it's an answer that you could justify if you're thinking like individualistically in a sort of American consumerist mindset. Maybe you can justify it. Although even on those grounds, I do think that the union membership is worth it, even on grounds that I ideologically disagree with. I do not believe that you should think of your union as a service that you pay money to and therefore you get representation back in exchange for your money. Your union is an organization that you are the union, your fellow workers are the union, and so your dues are only part of your participation in the union. And so if you only put your dues in, then, you can't complain that much if the union doesn't give you very much in return, because you have only given part of what the union really needs from you. But even if you only think of the union in the kind of consumerist, American, individualistic mindset, it is worth it still, even in that case, because the union is fighting this in court, and the union has to pay for attorneys who are going to ultimately be arguing these cases in front of the Supreme Court. Hiring attorneys who can argue in front of the Supreme Court is not cheap, right? And these attorneys who are working for AFGE, I mean, they could be getting so much more money than they are if they went and worked for the other side, right? But it still costs money. You have to do it. And they might succeed, right? It's very possible that they will succeed. I mean, they have been successful so far in lower courts, and they actually were able to get the VA's contract reinstated, right? So maybe that happens here. Maybe they're successful at the Supreme Court, but even if they're not successful at the Supreme Court, potentially they're able to hold this case until the next administration, keep the case going until the next administration, in which case the next administration, if it's a Democratic administration, might be willing to settle with the union. That happened last time. You'll remember that AFGE was, during the first Trump administration, kicked out of many federal government offices and had many of the normal benefits taken away from it. AFGE sued the federal government, and then under the Biden administration, AFGE or the government settled with AFGE, and ultimately AFGE was reimbursed for what it lost under the first Trump administration. That could happen again, but that was only possible because we had good lawyers at the national level. We have to pay for them, right? We have already at AFGE had to lay off half of our staff. This costs money, right? And you get a benefit from that. You also, most or a lot of locals, especially the bigger ones, have, potentially attorneys that they maybe have on staff the whole time or that they contract with who are able to and do win grievances. And even in the absence of a collective bargaining agreement, the union can hire attorneys to win EEO cases, right? And so that costs money. And, as a union member, you do get access to Union Plus discounts and stuff. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I was in DC, and I was able to get like a 40% discount on a hotel in DC. I think I only paid like $100 a night in DC because of Union Plus, right? I won a contest. I got $2,000 from Union Plus one time because I won a contest from them. There's all sorts of benefits. AFGE has a $10,000 free life insurance benefit. Just that in and of itself, those are reason enough if you're just thinking on, which again, I do not think you should. You should not think about it like that. But even if you do, on those grounds alone, union membership is worth it. But much, much, much more importantly than that, it is important that you continue to pay dues to your union, but specifically that you continue to participate in your union. Because if you don't, the only likely predictable outcome is that the union becomes weaker and that the union is more likely to lose, and the Trump administration is more likely to succeed in its effort to destroy the federal worker labor movement. Scott Holdison in the chat says the forces aligned against the working class never stop trying to take more and give less to us. We must be prepared at all times to fight back. This is a multi-generational fight. Indeed. And it's not fair. It's not fair that we have to fight for what we deserve. But we do. All right. I don't have anything else.
We've got a voicemail.
Oh, that's right. Let's we've got a voicemail. And 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. If you'd like to call in or leave a voicemail at any time, you can do that. One of the things that we would love to get is we would love to hear why you listen to the Valley Labor Report. So why is it that you listen to the Valley Labor Report? Let us know, 844-899-8857. Here is one listener's answer to that question, clip 3.
Hey guys, you recently said during one of your shows that you'd like people to call in and just explain why they are listening. I thought I'd give you a call. My name's Kristen. I live in Oklahoma City. About a year or two back, I was having a chat with my local letter carrier, and we got to chatting about what's been going on with the NALC. And during that conversation, he mentioned your podcast and show as one way to kind of stay tapped into what's been going on. And I've been listening ever since. As for why I'm still listening, mostly to hear about what's working for unions and what's not. And I also just feel less crazy when I hear other people calling out injustices that are completely ignored by the media and politicians, and which many workers themselves seem to just accept as inevitabilities. It's just really good to see people fight back against unfair policies. I think a secret wish I have is that there was somehow focused not just on, I guess, what I might call more typical industries. I'm kind of in a weird spot. I work in automotive and marketing, so I see up close a lot of unfair conditions and practices, but I'm kind of on the periphery and not directly affected myself. But doesn't mean it's right. And also, even just in my line of work, even though I get the advantage of, say, paid sick days and time off, ventilated spaces to work in, things I don't even have to think about. On the other hand, I think the issues that plague white-collar work, or whatever you want to call it, are not very often discussed. And I think it might be well known that those are harder spaces to unionize, maybe just because the work itself can be so individualized. I myself am on the road a lot. I work alone, and I just meet with clients on behalf of a much larger company that's technically global. So this is a long message. I just wanted to let you know where I'm coming from, why I listen. I think you guys do a really great job. I really appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
Kristen from Oklahoma City, thank you so much for your voicemail. Really excited that you got turned on to us from your local letter carrier, the word of mouth listenership expansion. That's really exciting. That's super cool. As for the the interest in more conversations about less typical industries, maybe less blue collar industries. I definitely agree. And we'll try to do some more of that. We did have one who was, we had one today, union staffer. That's sort of not exactly, but of course that's still kind of within the union world. Maybe a little bit kind of what you would expect. But I don't talk about it a whole lot, but I was a white collar worker for the federal government, right? I'm still a member of AFGE, and so organizing white collar workers is definitely something that's close to my heart. It's very important. White collar workers should see themselves as part of the working class. But, I think you touched on something there that one of the reasons that maybe it's difficult is because sometimes white-collar work can be individualized. White-collar workers are now more often working from home. And so if you are the only person that you see all day, it's very easy to think of yourself as an individual. White-collar workers also more likely to have degrees, and we are sort of acculturated to see ourselves as sort of individually important because of our degree havingness a little bit more than maybe a line worker does. And that's bad. it's really dumb. We shouldn't feel that way. We should not feel special because we're working with our brains rather than with our hands. It's just a different tool that we're using. And, I definitely think that white collar workers need to be disabused of that notion. And I think potentially AI might be, might be a tool that is, that the boss uses to disabuse us of that notion that we are special, and start to kind of proletarianize the white collar industry, which would be bad for white collar workers, but could potentially lead to increased organizing in that space. But yeah, I mean, it's very important. We are not fundamentally different than blue collar workers.
That's right. You got to go to work to pay your bills.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're not like those on top who don't have to do that because they have enough money that their money makes money and they can just live off that, right? They can play around in the stock market and do all those sorts of things. But the vast majority of us, whether we're working with our brain, working with our hands, both, and I'll extend the metaphor, our heart, right? A lot of work is care work. We have a lot of underpaid folks who are taking care of the sick, the elderly, the disabled, domestic work, agricultural work. There are so many industries that either, are not just manufacturing, but, are blue collar, white collar, pink collar, whatever you want to call it. There are so many different industries in which people work, and unions are just not as common as they should be in so many of those. So I've been excited to see, for example, CWA has really been organizing more and more in the nonprofit sector, in both CWA proper as well as the News Guild. I think that's really exciting. I know that the nonprofit employees union, MPEU, which is based out of IFPTE, they have seen explosive growth over the last few years. CWA also has been organizing at banks, at Wells Fargo banks, right? Another kind of, more professional type job that is often it's one of the least organized sectors in the economy. So I think that's all promising. And I do think that, she's on to something. It is often very individualized in your work. You may be on a team or in a department, but often your product is very much, something you're going to have to put together. So that may be different than like when I go work a stagehand gig, right? And I'm on the electrical crew or video wall crew, as I was on last night. It was a team effort, right? Like I individually could not put that video wall together. There's only so much I really could do by myself. And so like we had to work together. And I know a lot of workplaces are different than that. And while that can pose some challenges, the basics, the fundamentals are the same. You've got to get to know your coworkers. You've got to develop relationships with your coworkers. You've got to find out what the issues are that resonate with your coworkers. Because no matter what environment you're working in, it could always be better. It could always be better. And you could always protect what you like for the future. You don't have to just organize because you're unhappy. Chances are you probably are, given the state of this country and the state of this world, and particularly economic conditions here in the South. Your job probably does suck. But even if it doesn't, why not organize to keep what you like, to protect what you like, and to defend it into the future? Because for me, like every job should be a good union job. Manufacturing in the auto industry was not a very good job. UAW made it a good job. And it has declined as UAW's coverage has declined, right? So any job could be a good job. I think to myself every day when I'm out and about just shopping in the local economy, going to the gas station, right? Going to the fast food restaurant. And I think about why shouldn't those jobs be good jobs? If we're going to have them, if we're going to need them, if we need someone to do some labor, they should be paid a living wage. They should get good benefits. They should be able to raise their family and thrive in their community and participate in their community. Not have to work 2 or 3 jobs, not have to work 50, 60 hours a week. not have to go DoorDash to pay their cancer treatment bills. That's insane. But you're right, Jacob. I mean, building working class solidarity is the most important mission in front of us. Uniting people across industries, across educational backgrounds, across race, which is often the trickiest, gender, religion, all these things, geography. We have to organize working class solidarity because the vast, vast majority of us have more in common with each other than we do the bosses and politicians who run the show. And the sooner we figure that out and we come together and build our power together, the more we can make change. That's how we've always made change in this country. And they don't really teach that in school, right? Like, you're kind of given this simplistic narrative of America is great, it's always been great, but yeah, there were some problems. But guess what? We fixed those and we made it even more great. But the reality is that every inch of progress in this country came from everyday working people banding together to force positive change, to be heard, to make sure that we were heard. So, keep it going. And I would say the last thing I'll mention is, please, other folks, let us know your thoughts. What do you like about the Valley Labor Report? Why do you listen? What do you want us to do more of, to do less of? Who should we interview? What topics should we explore? Really, give us your ideas and your feedback. We do really appreciate that because, as we say every week, we're not professionals at this. We're just working people who want things to be better for working people. And damn it, someone's got to say something, right? We figured out a way to get a platform and to grow it, and we're going to keep doing that because working people deserve better. And so we appreciate your support, Kristen, and everyone else out there. Appreciate everyone listening. Give us a call, 844-899-TVLR. Leave us your voicemail. We really appreciate it.
All right, that's going to be it for us today, folks. We'll see you next week.